Jams, jams, jams. Picture books and jams. Welcome, everybody, to PBJamz. Music and picture books. What a perfect sandwich. Squish them all together. What a yummy snack.
Well, good morning or afternoon, whenever it is that you are joining us for this episode of PBJamz. I am super excited to welcome today Karen Konnerth, the author and illustrator and puppeteer extraordinaire of Calliope Kate and the Voice of the River, along with a couple of other books. And I'm hoping that Karen's going to come back and talk to us about at least one of those later on. So she and I have already been chatting. She's delightful to talk with, and she has so many great ideas. She's shared a teacher guide with us already, which I'm going to include down below in the resources. And she is the one that designed and recorded the video that I'm going to be sharing for the little jams part in the information below in this episode as well. So she has been so wonderful to work with. And so Karen, welcome, and thank you for being here today.
Thank you so much, Tani. I am so honored to be here on PBJamz. I love your whole concept of picture books and music. I just think that's really fantastic.
They go together so well, just
They
like
do.
peanut butter and jelly.
Exactly. Yes.
Yeah,
Uh-huh.
it's such a fun way to just finding all the picture books that have music connections has been so fun for me, and I love finding resources. That's my jam. That's one of the things that I love about being a teacher, is pulling together all the fun resources. And so I'm really looking forward to digging into Calliope and Tall Tales and all the things that you bring to the table with this book, which is so fun. So talk to us a little bit about Calliope Kate and the Voice of the River. Maybe give us just a little, a little introduction to that, and then tell us, how in the world did you come up with this idea for Calliope Kate?
Okay, well, first I should tell you, I live in New Orleans and I live on the west bank of the river. So I live right across the river from the French Quarter where all the tourists go. However, that is where the steamboat Natchez docks, and the steamboat Natchez has a calliope on it. It's one of if you watch the video about the calliope, you'll learn a little more about that from Debbie Fagnano, the calliope player. But anyway, the purpose of the calliope in a steamboat is to call people down to the river. And it was put onto steamboats in the 1800s, the late 1800s. And it is really, really loud. It can be heard for at least 3 miles. And also because it's steam whistles, it can't be tuned really perfectly. It probably depends on the humidity, the weather, the temperature, all kinds of things. So anyway, it's an instrument that's very loud and a little bit out of tune, and to me, totally charming sound.
Yeah.
So I hear it in my studio in Algiers Point all the time. And that sound is what inspired this story. I just thought such a loud sound that was a little bit out of tune really needed a tall tale character to play the instrument. And I'm talking about tall tales in the American tradition of Paul Bunyan, Pecos Bill, all these people that could do fantastic things. They're not superheroes, which is always what I tell kids. They don't fight bad guys or anything, but they just have amazing abilities. They just do. And so I decided Calliope Kate, her amazing ability, well, she does other things in the book. She rides a giant catfish. She does a lot of things and she can swim in the river right away when she's a baby. But anyway, I decided she would save the city from a hurricane, because that's always a threat here in New Orleans, by playing the calliope, by chasing it away. And so it's a tall tale. And it was the sound of the calliope that inspired this.
I love that. It is, as Karen and I were talking about the air date for this episode, we chose right in the middle of hurricane season.
Yeah.
Because, I mean, I live on the coast too, not right on the coast. I'm about an hour inland in North Carolina, but we also deal with hurricanes on an annual basis, and so I love this idea of this tall tale with this hurricane connection, and also a bit of a puppet connection. So
Yes.
yeah, talk to us a little bit about the illustrations and your puppetry.
Okay, sure. I've been a professional full-time puppeteer for many decades, actually. And I'm kind of evolving into doing more work with writing and illustration. I still love visual storytelling, but I've toured a lot. And actually what changed everything was the pandemic, because all of a sudden I couldn't work in schools anymore. I couldn't tour anymore. And I had all this time in my studio to be able to work on the writing and illustration I had been wanting to do for many years, but I didn't have time because I was always moving around. So that changed that. But as a puppeteer, I've traveled a lot. I've presented in Spanish in Central and South America. I've gone to a lot of festivals. I mean, many schools and libraries, countless schools and libraries. And I've traveled in Europe as well. And so it's an art form that is very ancient and all over the world. So the puppeteers are really not a large family, but a very worldwide family, and really feels like a family when puppeteers from different countries, it doesn't matter if you don't speak the same language or not, it's very much of a bond and a kinship, because we're all telling stories using these all different kinds of ways to make the story visual. And so over the years, I've used all different kinds of puppets. The only kind of puppet I really haven't used are regular string marionettes. But I happened to have an opportunity to go to a workshop in Prague, Czech Republic, in 2019. And it was a workshop on making Czech marionettes. And I actually really liked them a lot. And I'll show you. Here's Calliope Kate right here. And this is one that I made after I came back. So this is Calliope Kate, the main character of the story. It's carved out of basswood. It has a mechanism at the top that this little rocker that controls the feet. And then also, it's easier for me to do with my right hand because I'm for the hands, there's 2 strings right here. And so, but the Czech marionette is significantly different from other kinds of marionettes because it has this rod here, and it only has the 2 strings, a string to each leg, and then there's 1 string that goes back and forth to the each hand. And so it's not as likely to get tangled. And I like the size of them too. They're very magical and small. So I built a whole proscenium, a whole stage and everything. And originally, and actually this wasn't the first version of this story. First, I built the story. I wasn't planning it as a book. I built it as a hand puppet story. I don't have the hand puppets anymore. I've given a lot of puppets away. But then after I went to Prague, I rebuilt it. And anything can be a puppet. So in the story, Calliope Kate, well, first she plays piano. She has to learn how to play piano because that's why she can play the Calliope, because it also has a keyboard. So I decided that the piano would be a character as well. And so
Love it.
It doesn't talk, but it definitely is a character. And and even actually I should show you that the Calliope itself, I decided had to be a character, and I have this is from the show, and all of these are photographed in the book. But here's the steamboat, the Delta Bell, but the Calliope itself is a puppet. So now on the steamboat Calliope, the whistles don't move like this. Steam does come out of them, but since I couldn't do steam in my show. Well, maybe I could have, but I didn't anyway. I decided to have them move and have their voices, have their mouths open and closed like that.
Love it.
And this is all made of wood. I sew the clothes, and like, for example, in one of the illustrations from the book, there she is playing the Calliope. So I had to illustrate the book. What I did is have a photographer come and photograph the puppets in all different positions. So I would just hold her with her foot up, with her foot down, all kinds of things. And then I used digital methods to put it together into the illustrations.
That's amazing. That is absolutely amazing. So this started as a puppet show.
Yes.
Did it first as a show. So how did you transition then from the show to the book?
That's a good question. And that's something that I really had to take some time on, because when you're doing a puppet show, everything is live, it's in the moment. And I don't write down a really clean a script. I like to I improvise. I mean, the story is always going to be the same, but the characters aren't necessarily going to say the same thing.
Okay.
And so I have to, when I write it down as a book, it has to be written down in a whole different way. Plus, of course, with a picture book, you have the illustrations, so you don't have to write down everything. But nevertheless, some of what would be in, you have to put a few more words in than just dialogue, because with the puppet, you
Right.
have all that movement. Like, you don't say, you have to say she walked across the room, you
Yep.
see it happening.
Right.
So so that was a big difference between writing a puppet script, especially the loose puppet script that I work with, and a book. So that took some time to work that out and make the make the words still be very sparse as far as, a picture book. I didn't want it to be too long.
Right.
And then, but also to have some poetic language in it, which I really like to have. She does speak in terms of like the tall tale, American tall tale characters. Like she'll say, she's kind of wild in her speech. She'll, like, even when she starts, Yahoo, I'm Calliope Kate. I was born on this here Mississippi River. I swim like a catfish. I dance like a whirlwind, and I got a whole story behind my name. So that is a lot like Mike Fink and some of the other characters. They're all wild characters. And
Yeah.
so that's the way she speaks also. So
Yeah.
yeah.
I love the modern take. I mean, tall tales have been around for such a long time, and we are all familiar with, I mean, I would imagine, and it is still taught in schools, as a genre.
Yes. Mhm.
And I know in second grade, when I was teaching second grade, we talked about, legends and tall tales and fairy tales and, all
Yes.
the folk tale type things and the differences in those. So it is still taught. So I'm assuming that, most kids, by the time they get at least up to like middle school, have some idea of, Paul Bunyan and John Henry and, some of those. But
Yes.
it's so nice to have a new modern tall tale to introduce kids to. I just think that's fabulous. And a girl, because there's not a lot of
That
girl.
is true.
Yeah, girl characters are not as, as common in those tall tales. We have
Right.
Ghost Bill, and I mean they're all, most of them are guys. So nice to have a girl tall tale
It
character.
is. It is. Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Love that. And I love that she chases away the hurricane. We need some Calliope Kate. It's about time for Calliope Kate to make some rounds, I think.
Yeah, I think so. Oh, yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
Definitely. Yeah.
Um,
Uh-huh.
so talk to us a little bit about, well, first off, is there anything else you want to tell us about the writing process or the revision process? Anything that stands out to you about that we haven't talked about so far?
Well, one thing that I did want to include in this, because a tall tale is always from a certain place, like Pecos Bill has to be in the West. Paul
Right.
Bunyan has to be in the woods. So all of this is very specific. And that actually is how I have a workshop. It's so much fun to do in schools. Excuse me, I call it sense of place through tall tales. And so she had to come from the Mississippi River. And that in the story, that's where she's born. She's born on a flatboat on the river. But so I wanted information in the back of the book that was factual information about where the river is, what a calliope is, various details that are referred to in the story, but just in the sequence of the fictional story. But I wanted the nonfiction information in the back also. So yes, I did include that in the back of the book. So yeah.
Yeah, that's a great point. And it also lends itself, and if you guys, look down below, I always include a lot of teaching resources. And as I said, Karen has a lovely teaching guide that relates to that sense of place that she was just talking about. But because, I mean, you have the hurricane connection, so you have lots of science connections
Yeah.
with that, and
Mhm.
weather and wild weather and all of that. You have the tall tales, which is such a lovely literary connection, and you can make connections with all the, older tall tales. Then you have the social studies connection with this sense of place. You have the art
Mhm.
connection with the puppetry. So Oh my word, it is so full of great teaching content that you could, any teacher could take this book and go in a number of different directions, which also makes it really nice for you to be able to do school visits. Like there's a lot of stuff that you could pull from to do some lovely school visits with this.
Yes, I love doing school visits and I am available to go anywhere. I loved presenting this particular workshop, The Sense of Place Through Tall Tales, because the students have to think about what is significant about where they are. Because
Yeah.
what I have them do is write tall tales from their um, wherever they live. So, for example, I've done workshops with students in Helena, Arkansas, which is also in the Mississippi River. And I thought, well, it'll be kind of river connected stories. But no, the kids, their sense of place was all about their farms. Their families
Uh-huh.
were a lot of cotton farmers. And so what we did, what I do when I get to go in a classroom, which I love, is they create their stories very quickly, really. I have some templates that I work with, but then I have them build shadow puppets to tell the stories. Excuse me. And so when I went to Helena, we had shadow puppets of boll weevils, of tractors,
Oh my
of all
gosh, how
kinds of things
fun.
that those kids were familiar with. So it really is making them think about what is significant about their home. And I think that's so important now where mass media just is kind of mushing everything together, and I think it's really important for people to, excuse me, grow up thinking about what is significant and special about wherever they live. And so that's one thing that this does.
Yeah, yeah, I love that. That's fabulous.
Yeah.
So talk to us about the path of publication. How did it go from, okay, I've taken it from a concept to a puppet show to a book, and how did it go actually from, or a manuscript, how did it go from the manuscript to becoming a book? Did you cold query? Do you have an agent? How did that happen?
I did, no, I don't have an agent now. I submitted it to Pelican Publishing, which is a local publisher that publishes books from, they want it to be about this area. It's a very, they
Okay.
want regional work. And I submitted, like, I think, I'm trying to remember now. I think I submitted it more than once to them
Okay.
because I was kind of learning how to make it into it. It was I think I submitted it once before I had illustrated it, and then when I illustrated it, and I had
Okay.
really reduced the text, that made a big difference. I also, one thing I wanted to talk about the writing of it. One other interview that I did that was so fascinating was with Captain Hawley. He had been the captain of the Natchez for a long time, but his life story was so fascinating. He passed away a couple years ago, but I'm really so excited to have been able to interview him because he actually gave me the idea, and this is credited in the book too, of that the calliope is the voice of the river, because that's the sound that people would hear it. They would be, away from their from the bank of the river, they'd hear it and they'd know the boat was coming and they would come down to the river. But his life story was very fascinating as far as how he became started working on the river. He told me when he was a young teenager, he lived in, I can't remember what town. It's a town upriver on the Mississippi River. I'm not sure if it was Hannibal. I'm not sure what town it was. But anyway, it was traditional for the class, I guess the high school class, to go down and see the boat when it came in, maybe take a ride on the boat. And usually there'd be a calliope player and they would hear that. And so when he went one day, there was no calliope playing, and he asked them why not, and they said, we lost our calliope player. And he said, well, can I try? And because he played piano. And the captain told him, well, okay, you can try. Go on up there because it's up on the roof. But if I go like this, you stop. And the captain didn't. And he kept on playing. And
Oh, neat.
he was hired as a teenager to be the calliope player and go up and down so many rivers of America. And then he became a captain, but he still played the calliope. He played it every week.
Oh, that is awesome. What
Yeah,
a
so
fabulous
yeah,
story.
that was a very inspiring story to me. And so that as far as the path to publication, it inspired me to feel like this is a story that needed to be told, even as a tall tale.
Yeah. Yeah.
And
And so
as far as I'm sorry.
no, it's okay. I was just gonna urge you to continue. You're
Oh,
good.
okay. Yeah, as far so when Pelican accepted it, they pretty much just what I sent in, that's what they published. They didn't really change anything at all. So
Okay.
yeah, so
Very
that's
cool. Yeah. Nice. And that's really a perfect segue into the favorite question here at PBJamz, and that is let's talk about the music. And so
yes.
this is full of musical connections. We talked about the art a little earlier with the, connection, but of course, music is always one of the big connections that we want to talk about. So Calliope Kate plays the piano. And so how
Yes.
does she learn or transition to being Calliope player, and what else would you like to tell us about the music that's in this book?
Okay. Well, in the story, when Calliope Kate is born on the river, I can show you when she's born, she can swim in the river right away. I had to make a baby puppet of her. So here she is as a baby, and she can swim right away in the river, and that's in the illustrations too. Here's her mother. Now her mother is a little bit horrified at how wild this child is. And they end up floating down the river because they're on a shanty boat that doesn't have a motor. They can only go downriver with and they have a business where the mother knits socks and the father repairs shoes for the river folks. And that was common at that time. People would have businesses and just float down the river. Now, when they got to New Orleans, and this also was very common, their boat was just dismantled and made into a house. And there are still boats, houses, there are still houses in New Orleans now made of what's called barge board. And it's wood that was taken apart from the barges that floated down the river, and they had no engine, so they couldn't go back up. So it's still, there's actually a business right in my neighborhood called Barge Board that sells recycled building stuff.
Really?
So anyway, but when she gets to New Orleans, her mother says she has to become a civilized young lady. And so one of the things she tells her she has to do is learn to play piano. She doesn't want to play piano. She wants a trumpet because it's a lot louder. But her mother says, no, you got the piano. So I had the piano puppet, and they become friends, and she plays boogie woogie on it. And, she gets into it. So that was that connection. But she's also inspired to play music because her father, and this is in the story, and I had to have a little puppet of it. Oops, sorry, there we go. Her father plays fiddle. And so obviously a puppet can't really play fiddle, but I did have him set up so he could play a fiddle, and had some
Love that.
in the show. And that's in the illustration that her father, I used to play fiddle myself, and piano too.
Oh,
actually.
did you really?
Yeah, I love fiddle.
Yeah.
So anyway, so that also was a music connection. It was in the story that she admires her father's. She dances with her father's fiddle playing when she's a baby. Yeah.
Nice. And
And one other connection I'm sorry, in the book is at the very last page, I did put in a song. So there is some sheet music here to a song that's commonly heard all over New Orleans, but this marching in. So it's a simple version that a child would be able to play. I consulted my son-in-law is a piano player, and I consulted him and because his daughter was learning the piano, is this child friendly? Because I wrote the arrangement. He said, yeah, it was. So
oh, good. Nice. And so does she, for our viewers, so she plays piano, how does Calliope Kate transition to learn to play the Calliope in order to chase away the hurricane?
Okay, when a hurricane is looming, and she has already befriended this catfish that she can ride on. He takes her around, and this is also something her mother definitely does not approve of. But when the hurricane is coming, she tries to just play the piano because she's been playing like loud music on the piano, and here she is riding on the catfish. So she tries to do that, but it's not enough. It's not loud enough. And so she realizes that she has to have something louder. And so she calls Lafitte, the catfish, and tells him to take her out to the Delta Bell. And so she goes up on the roof. The captain first tells her, no children are allowed on deck. But she tells him she has to get up there because she has to save the city from the hurricane. And so he lets her go. And so she can play it because it's a keyboard the same as a piano. It's shorter. I just learned that. I think it has 32 keys, so it's
Yep.
quite a bit shorter. But it's the same thing as a piano or an organ. And so that's why she would be able to play it, was because she already knew how to play piano.
So it just needed to be louder, chase the hurricane away.
Yes, that's
Got
it.
you. Got you.
And I saw actually in that video, when I went up on the roof of the Natchez to make the video to see Debbie Fagnano play, she had to go and turn this big valve. There are these pipes right up, just laying along the roof of the steamboat, and she had to turn this valve, and that would make the steam go through to get to the Calliope. So it actually is steam powered.
Yeah, it's such an amazing instrument. And I mean, until you and I started talking, I was not really, I mean, I had heard it, but I really had never really thought about what's making that sound and how is it different. And so I just think that's really fascinating. And you guys be sure, don't just stop with this video. Make sure you watch the video below that Karen and Deborah, right? Deborah?
Debbie.
Debbie,
Fagnano.
okay. That
Yeah.
that Karen and Debbie put together, because you actually get to see the Calliope playing, and it's just fascinating, just really wonderfully amazing. And I always love, go ahead.
Can you believe that what I've read is the Calliope was invented by a Vermont farmer to use in a church steeple? It didn't happen, which I think is probably a good thing. But that's what it was for.
How interesting. So
Yeah.
not connected with the river at all originally.
No.
Very interesting. Yeah. Yeah, I think that's really fascinating. And I always love hearing my guests talk about their personal music connections. So I love knowing that you play piano and you play fiddle.
Yeah.
So that's really cool. It's always not, I think it's so interesting too, always to see where our real lives show up in our stories, you
Oh,
know?
definitely.
Yeah. And so knowing that about you and how that shows up in this story as, you know, her playing the piano and the dad playing the fiddle. And so it's always cool to see how we can, I think as authors, that's a great kind of a tip or an idea for thinking about ways you can bring bits and pieces of yourself into your story, even if it's maybe not based on, you know, obviously Calliope K is not Karen Konnerth's autobiography, you know, but there are bits and pieces of Karen Konnerth in this story nonetheless.
Oh, yeah. And I think that the concept of write what you know is really a very broad concept, because it means that anything can inspire you, because this is just a sound that I heard in my neighborhood, and that's what inspired this story. So really, you can find inspiration for stories absolutely everywhere.
Absolutely everywhere. That's a great, yeah, that's a great thing to think about. And a great thing to keep our eyes and our ears, obviously, our ears also open to those things that could inspire a story. And, you know, we're still a few months out, but Tara Lazar's Story Storm. Do you do Story Storm, Karen? Are you familiar with Story Storm?
No, I mean, I've heard of it, but I don't know much about
Right.
it.
So Tara Lazar, who's a fabulous picture book author in her own right, she hosts in January every year, she hosts a story storm event, and that's the sole purpose of it, is just to garner ideas. And so for the whole month of January, you're just super focused, your eyes and ears are open. There's inspiring blog posts every day to help you open up your eyes and ears and maybe try out some new things to get some cool ideas. And your job is to get like at least 30 ideas in those 31 days, and you sign a little pledge, and she gives prizes. But the real prize is that you walk away with like 30 ideas that you can write about during the year. So
Definitely.
yeah, it's really fun. So there's so many great ways to find those little ideas, and then they just spark something amazing like this one. I love it.
Uh-huh.
Love it. So
Yeah.
talk to us about, well, first off, before I get to the last thing, is there anything else that you want to share about the book that I haven't asked? What should I have asked that I didn't?
I think we've covered it pretty well. I think we've talked about the instrument that inspired it and tall tales and the connection to the classroom.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Such a great book. Lots of connections. So talk to us about what Karen's working on right now. What's coming? What's,
Okay.
what's happening?
Okay, well, I am always working on several projects. I have I have way more ideas than I can deal with. So right now, I'm doing two different things as far as I love working on picture books, and I love doing collage illustration. I've got a couple. These are just kind of, these weren't really used for anything, but I paint paper myself, paint and texture it, and then I cut it, just scissors and glue.
That's
So that's
awesome.
one technique I use. Some of them I show, I use digital techniques to layer them and put them together, but it's still based on that. So I have several different stories, some that I'm submitting now, but I'm also working on novel. And this is a novel that is based on a story that well, not a story, based on something that my grandmother told me, and that inspired a whole story to me. And so it's very it's historic, it's a middle grade historical fiction novel. And I'm in the editing stages of that right now. I've got some wonderful help from Laura Backus right now. And
Oh yeah.
and so I'm that's what I'm particularly focused on now, but I've still got the the picture books going in the background too.
Of course. Yeah, we always have lots of projects. Well, I mean, you're really a triple threat. So you're an artist. Well, really more than a triple threat. Artist, puppeteer, writer, musician, all the things. Yeah. It's
Well, I feel like it all comes together as a visual storyteller. I mean, songs tell stories, pictures, words. Just lately, I put together a wordless story that I'm really excited about.
oh
I'm
nice.
excited about using the physicality of the book as part of the story. So I can't really show it to you right now because
Of
I have
course
these
not.
kind of little paper puppets that I made, and I compose them different ways on different pages. So it's they go in off and on the page, in and out of
Oh, fun.
the book, so it's yeah, so I'm working on a lot of different ideas. Yeah.
Yeah, always lots of ideas. That's fabulous. How wonderful. Well, you guys keep your eyes peeled for Karen. If you would like to schedule her for a school visit, all of her information will be linked below. And some lucky winner will win their choice of, you can choose a copy of Calliope Kate, or you can choose a picture book critique done by Karen, or you can choose a virtual classroom visit where she will come and talk about Calliope Kate, maybe do some reading and some puppets, and it's bound to be a super fun time. So that's one way you can get her into your classroom if you would like to do that, or get a critique or a copy of this wonderful book. All you got to do is leave a comment on the blog. If you're watching this on YouTube, make sure you click the link in the description, head over to the blog and leave us a little comment there. And that'll giveaway will be active for like 2 weeks from the air date, the first air day of the episode, until just before the next episode airs. So we keep that giveaway active for about 2 weeks. And so make sure that you are looking out for her. Karen's going to come back to PBJamz because she has another book out called The Snowman Waltz. Is that? Yes, Snowman Waltz. And so when it gets cold in winter, we're going to come back and we're going to revisit that beautiful book. I cannot wait to talk about that one too. So stay tuned because she's coming back, and look out for all of her other things. She also has a book about puppetry, The Sophisticated Sock, I think it is.
Yes, for
Um
teachers.
yeah, a great teacher's book showing you how to use some puppets in your class. And I'm just here to tell you, I did a little mini puppet thing in my classroom this year. And my kids absolutely loved it. So this year, for this past school year, was kind of inspired by PBJamz for me. And I did all the picture book biographies that I featured on PBJamz. And I called it my year of musical superheroes. And so Julie Andrews, the book that Julie Hedlund wrote, song after song, um, so one of the things I love about Julie Andrews, is of course her movie, and in that the Lonely Goat Herd song is done in puppets. She and the
Oh,
kids in The Sound of Music, they put on this lovely, and so I pulled that video to show my kids, and they were fascinated with the marionette puppets. And so I have this one little marionette puppet, and he's just a little stuffy. He's a bear. He's big actually. And my kids loved it. And so then we talked about we were talking about Mr. Rogers. That was another. And so we talked about his puppets in the land of make believe. And so we looked at his puppets. So I brought out all my puppets, and we just had just such fun times. So teachers, if you think puppets are too much, they're not too much. They're so fun, and the kids love them, and it really accesses their creativity in a different way. And I'm so excited, Karen, that you're utilizing the puppetry. I have another writer friend who's trying to figure out how to use her puppets in books and her puppet stories, and I just love that medium. When we lived near Atlanta for a few years, we had a daycare center, and we took our kids to the Center for Puppetry Arts in Atlanta. Have you been there?
yes, I have. Oh,
Yeah,
yeah.
probably done some shows there maybe. Oh, it's just fabulous. It was so amazing. And so there's so much. So if you're living in the Georgia area and you haven't checked out the Center for Puppetry Arts, or if you're planning an Atlanta trip, make sure you check them out. Just it's so much fun to bring puppets into the classroom, and the kids absolutely love it. They respond so well.
Oh, yes. And when I come into the classroom, they write tall tales with me. They make their own shadow puppets, and they're quickly made, but they have to take them home like it's their firstborn child.
Yeah.
They come to life to children, no matter how simple the puppet is. Yeah.
Right. And that's a great point, because there are all different kinds of puppets, and you don't have to get this sophisticated with your puppets. It like in your book, you can use socks. You can just put a popsicle stick on something, a craft stick, and but kids will activate that creativity. Paper plates, you can make the little paper plate puppets. And so there's so many fun ways that you can do that. So if you take nothing else away from this episode, which I know you're going to, because there's so much here, but just that's one great tip, is to bring those puppets into your classroom. However, whatever you have, or whatever you can make, the kid, even just the little googly eyes that you fit on your finger, those are just super fun. The kids love those. Cover your hand with a handkerchief and put the little googly eye on your finger. So much fun. They love it. Let me just remind you before we close out to please support our authors. You can, of course, buy their books. We want you to do that. You can also leave reviews. So please, if you do read Calliope K and you love it, and I know you will, leave a review. Goodreads, Amazon, Barnes & Noble. Those are great places to leave reviews for our authors. Request their books at your libraries, your local bookstores, and of course, word of mouth is a great way. If you know somebody who is a teacher, a puppet lover, a person that likes tall tale, just anybody, everybody's gonna love this book. It's so fun. So share it out with all the people that you know, and by word of mouth and social media, post about it, whatever you can do to help the author and this beautiful book make it into more homes and more bookshelves and more libraries and more bookstores, because it is truly worthwhile, and it brings together so many wonderful things, puppets and music and tall tales, and it doesn't get any better than that. So thank you, Karen, for being here.
Thank you so much, Tawny. This was so much fun, and I look forward to seeing you again.
Yes, love these conversations. And thank you guys for joining us too for this episode, and we will see you next time for PBJamz. Bye.
Bye.
PBJamz, yummy books and music. PBJamz, reading, writing, teaching. PBJamz, what a yummy treat. Jamming PBs all the time. PBJamz, jams. Picture books and jams. We'll see you next time for